What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here with my NFL Week 3 power rankings entering Week 3 of the 2022 NFL season. This is how I feel about your favorite NFL team and what they have done through 2 weeks this season. Let me know where you believe your team should rank in the comment section below. Gronk spike the like button, and let's roll with my first power rankings of this season. Okay, so just a heads up, I will be looking to go live from this point forward every Monday for my power rankings. Sometime during the day, I'll go live for my power rankings moving forward. I didn't go live yesterday during the day because we had 2 games on Monday night, so there was no point of leaving 4 teams out of my power rankings or trying to discuss those teams without the sample size of 2 weeks and only going based off 1 week. So next week, remember, live on the channel during the day, Monday, there will be power rankings. Okay, so let's roll with number 32. My number 32 team, aka the worst team in football entering week 3, is the Houston Texans. But I will say this, it's not by much. I mean, there is a group of teams at the bottom. I would say there's a group of 4, 5, 6 teams even at the bottom of this list that I just feel are in that bottom tier. All teams that can compete for the number 1 overall pick, a top 3 pick, a top 5 pick in this year's draft. The Texans stand out as the bottom team. Not to say they haven't been competitive or even borderline impressive for their expectations entering the year. They were very close to knocking off the Denver Broncos. They were very close to knocking off the Indianapolis Colts. When you look deeper into those games, the Broncos lost to the Seahawks in the first week, so there's that. And the Colts got absolutely annihilated by the Jacksonville Jags. And in that Colts game, they were thoroughly dominated. The Colts, they possessed the football, they ran the football, they passed the football. They had over 500 yards in that game. So the Colts did deserve to win that first week game versus the Texans, and it ended up being a tie. You know, the Texans were up big in that game, so you deserve respect for that. But getting out yardaged the way you did in that game was not very impressive. And I look at the Texans as a team that maybe they're a little bit better than this, you could argue, but long term, throughout the season, I view them as a bottom tier team. They're going to fight, they're going to scratch, they're going to claw, they're going to be competitive, but they're not going to win very many games. So that's why I have them at the bottom, because they just don't have a high ceiling. The number 31 team is the Seattle Seahawks, kind of the opposite of the Texans in terms of one's AFC, one's NFC. They are both very similar in their conferences. Both teams will be teams that fight hard, teams that compete, teams that even give you a tough time here and there, but just don't have the quarterback play, just don't have the talent roster-wise. And right now, especially for Seattle, their defense is just lacking in the secondary. It's very young, very inexperienced. Their pass rush is not very good. They, week in, week out, lose at the line of scrimmage. I feel like the Texans are better at the line of scrimmage. The Seahawks, though, have more talent, you know, at wide receiver, at running back, more playmakers offensively, I feel like, than the Texans do. It's flip a coin type of deal. The Seahawks did win a game. The Texans did tie a game. Not looking too much into the record so far, but Seattle kind of came back down to earth last week, and I felt like in week 1, they got very lucky to upset the Broncos based on 2 1-yard line mess-ups by Denver. So Seattle is at number 31. My number 30 team is the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears looked like I thought they would in week 2. In week 1, they were able to survive a monsoon experience at home in Chicago versus the 49ers, who looked not prepared for that environment. Trey Lance obviously aided you guys in that victory. The Chicago Bears did not look very good versus their rival, the Green Bay Packers, at Lambeau Field on Sunday night. I am thoroughly unimpressed by Justin Fields and the passing game. I'm a little bit confused by the play calling on the offensive side of the football. I do think David Montgomery looks back, looks healthy. I like the running back duo, but we haven't seen much from Cole Kmet. Darnell Mooney's been severely disappointing. Defensively, they've been maybe more feisty than I gave them credit for. I think they've been well coached so far, but the lack of talent at all 3 levels will catch up with them, I do feel like. they have maybe a better pass rush than I gave them credit for. And Kyler Gordon, Brisk are some of their younger players. Eddie Jackson looks back in form. Their safeties, their secondary playing a little bit better than I expected. But there are pros, there are cons with the Bears. Obviously, they're 1-1, so not the end of the world here. But they just don't have a ton of talent, and their offense is just severely lacking from that standpoint. My number 29 team is the New York Jets. The New York Jets were able to upset the Cleveland Browns, if you want to call it a massive upset. I don't really think it was a massive upset. But Joe Flacco has rarely lost to the Browns in his career, and he proved it once again with an epic comeback victory. That was very cool for January Joe to see that one. The elite quarterback himself. I think the biggest development was the absolute awesome game from Garrett Wilson, their first-round pick receiver. Their defense severely disappointed me in week 2. I thought they played very well in week 1 despite allowing 3 touchdowns to Lamar. I thought they did a good job overall containing the Baltimore attack. In week 2, they couldn't get out of their own way. They're starting to get injured in the back end. We saw Sauce Gardner leave the game with an injury. We saw, them just not able to create a consistent pass rush versus a shaky quarterback in Jacoby Brissett. Offensively, though, they seem to have a lot of firepower. Elijah Moore, Breece Hall, Michael Carter, etc., playing good football. And I think if Joe Flacco can continue to stabilize this offense, I think they can be a team that week in, week out does compete with you and makes life difficult. At number 28, I got the Atlanta Falcons. And despite not winning a game so far, I've got Atlanta at 28. I think they've been competitive in both games. They let the Rams game get away from them early, but they were able to fight back and make it interesting at the end. I think the reason I have Atlanta at 28 and not at 31 or 32 like some others may have is just because of their offense. I feel like their offense, Mariota has been shaky, he's been up and down, but I feel like their offense has been pretty darn consistent and good and able to move the football versus 2 pretty solid defenses. I'm not sure how good the Rams defense is, but I know the Saints defense is pretty good, and I feel like the Falcons have competed with both teams and given both teams that I expected to make the playoffs in the NFC a run for their money. So I've got to give respect there. I also feel like they're pretty well coached on both sides. So I've got Atlanta at number 28. At number 27, Carolina. I think Atlanta is closer to Carolina than I would have thought entering the season. Baker Mayfield not playing very good football right now for Carolina early in his Panthers career. He's going to have to turn that around or people are going to start to question him. Baker Mayfield just gets far too many passes deflected at the line of scrimmage. It's frustrating to watch. Robbie Anderson is kind of reinvigorated so far this season. They lost 2 tough games by, I believe, a field goal in both. I mean, both games were extremely close. And DJ Moore has been a little quiet so far. Christian McCaffrey was able to get back on track in week 2 after not seeing as many touches as you would have thought in week 1. The offensive line has been shaky so far this season. The defense has been fine, but nothing fantastic, like they kind of needed them to be in order to be competitive this year. Matt Rule could be fired, could be the first coach fired, to be honest with you. Carolina's is not very good right now, and they've lost to 2 teams that I wouldn't say are very good either, so I can't really say that they lost to good competition. At number 26, the Tennessee Titans. I still have some respect for Mike Vrabel and Ryan Tannehill. How he played in week 1 I thought was admirable. Week 2, he was okay. I don't want to say he was the reason they got absolutely destroyed, but this team just doesn't have the same talent on the defensive side of the ball right now. Christian Fulton's hurt. Harold Landry's out for the year. That clearly shows up versus a team like Buffalo. Offensively, they just have a lack of firepower at wide receiver and tight end. There's really nowhere to go with the ball when they need a bucket right now. A.J. Brown is gone, obviously. Derrick Henry appears to be not the same player. Their offensive line is extremely shaky, and that offense sets up the defense in a lot of bad positions. So this team is just not very good right now, and the defense isn't able to pick up the slack for a bad offense. At number 25, the Indianapolis Colts, another team that got shellacked this past week in the AFC South, a team that lost 24-0, shut out by the Jacksonville Jags of all teams. And they clearly do not look like the team we thought they would be before the year. Matt Ryan's arm looks shot. The offensive line's a bit overrated. Jonathan Taylor, when they're not able to get him going, the offense is very lacking. Michael Pittman did not play in week 2, so obviously there is some silver lining there. But how much, how bad does your depth have to be that you drop off that significantly in terms of your passing game if you lose just one player. That's a real concern moving forward. The lack of usage for Nyheim Hines in the second half was a bit weird for the Indianapolis Colts. Not even the second half, like after the first quarter, it was a little odd what they were doing there. Defensively, they look older, they look slower, they look like a team that's taken a huge step back on the defensive side of the football. We'll see how Darius Leonard returning impacts them, but they just don't look like the same defense overall too. They're not really creating a pass rush. They're not stopping the run as well. There's just a lot of fundamental flaws with the Colts right now. At number 24, the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals are at 24 basically solely because of Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray was phenomenal in that comeback versus the Raiders and single-handedly won them that game. You still got to think that D-Hop's going to come back at some point. You know, Dortch has stepped up. Zach Ertz has stepped up. They haven't really gotten much going on the ground, but I think those things will improve for them offensively. I actually look at their offense as being on the incline, I guess. They're going to get better. It's going to be positive for them. They're not going to decline as the season goes on, so that could be a good thing for them overall because they typically decline as the season wears on because of Cliff Kingsbury's coaching. But the addition of D-Hop and those things starting to get it going and those players falling in line in the depth chart should be good things for them. Defensively, I'm still very concerned, but J.J. Watt playing was a big addition for them in that game, and their secondary also was very feisty and very aggressive, and I thought their secondary played very admirably versus Davante Adams and company, and they shut down Davante Adams. Isaiah Simmons had an awesome game, I felt like, so the Raiders couldn't finish that game, and you got to credit it to the Cardinals getting stopped. So I think the Cardinals showed some promise in that game at the end. At number 23, the New York Giants, they're 2-0, right? They're 2-0. Saquon Barkley looks like Saquon Barkley, which is a huge positive. They haven't really figured out what's going on at wide receiver. Kadarius Toney hasn't seen a lot of snaps. Sterling Shepard's coming off an injury. Richie James has been the most consistent target for them. They don't have much at tight end. So if they want to make a legitimate run towards the playoffs, they rather got to get Kadarius Toney going, or they've got to figure out the snap share or who's going to be their alpha. Kenny Golladay looks to be just dust. Defensively, though, they've been fairly strong in both games. I am a little concerned about their secondary when they play better attacks in the passing game, but that's not coming this week versus Dallas's backup quarterback. So we'll see how they fare in that divisional matchup, which should be a lower scoring game. If Saquon can continue to carry and Daniel Jones can continue to protect the ball, I think they'll be fine. And they could actually compete for this division. At number 22, the Dallas Cowboys. The reason I have the Cowboys at 22 and ahead of the Giants is, you know, the promise of Dak coming back makes them a good team. I've also been pretty impressed with their defense, right? They did give up yards against the BUCS early, but they were able to really slow them down in the red zone and cause some sacks, and they still have a very impressive pass rush led by Micah Parsons. Their linebackers are very good and fast and can cover and can stop the run, and their secondary, I think, is talented too. So this is a defense that's in that top 10 range, and this is a defense that can stifle the Bengals and can slow down the BUCS, and a defense that without Dak Prescott can make you somewhat of a competitor in these games. So I think a lot of credit is deservedly going towards that Dallas defense for keeping them at 500 so far. They need to find a way to run the ball better. Tony Pollard definitely showed better in week 2, and CeeDee Lamb continued to get him the football. Noah Brown's been a nice surprise for them so far. So Dallas at 22. At number 21, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Steelers are similar to the Cowboys, except they don't have a backup quarterback. They just don't have a good quarterback. It's just they're mostly a defensive team that they put a lot on the shoulders of their skill talent offensively. I was impressed with the skill talent offensively versus New England. I thought Claypool, Deontay Johnson, Pat Freiermuth, all these guys came through and played pretty solid games, but Trubisky was inconsistent. Trubisky was a little confused, and the Patriots have a strong defense. They do need to be better on the offensive line. They couldn't really protect Trubisky consistently, which was tough for him. They can't run the ball at all in any game versus anybody, which is a huge concern because if you don't have a great quarterback, you need to be able to run the ball. Defensively, without TJ Watt, they're clearly a different unit. They go from very, very good to just okay, just good. So I thought the Patriots moved the ball pretty consistently on them. They just found a way to kind of stifle them when it was time to get points, which New England, that's more of a concern for the Patriots. But the Steelers, I think they're kind of what we thought they would be so far. They're a feisty, competitive team, but not a very good one. at number 21. At number 20, the Cleveland Browns. The Browns and the Steelers play on Thursday night, so that's going to be real interesting. I've got the Browns one spot higher just because I think they've shown more offensive potential so far. I've seen more out of their offense. I've seen more consistency. I think their running game is elite, which allows them promise to play sometimes in games where they're going to be in shootouts because their run game goes off, but they also can play in low-scoring affairs. So Jacoby Brissett hasn't been great at all, but Donovan Peoples-Jones and Amari Cooper have each had good games in week 1 and week 2. Their defense has been a bit hit and miss so far. They were really good in week 1, not so good in week 2. I'm not sure if their defense is a little overrated. Jadeveon Clowney looks to be injured moving forward, but they need to get more out of that secondary. I think they need to play better moving forward if they want a chance to get to a point where they can hopefully rely on Deshaun to get to the playoffs later in the year. I think they have a chance to put themselves in that position, but their running game needs to continue to dominate, and their defense needs to be better for sure. At number 19, the Washington Commanders. I've been fairly impressed with Washington's offense so far. I thought in week 2 early they kind of disappointed, but that's the roller coaster you're going to be on with Carson Wentz, right? He's going to have some really nice moments. He's going to have some really bad moments, and they're going to be aggressive. They're going to throw the ball down the field. I like how they're utilizing Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, and Jahan Dotson within the offense, and then even guys like Antonio Gibson and Logan Thomas are also contributing there. Offensive line is fairly solid. I think their defense is the massive concern. I think this would be a playoff team if we got an average defense out of them, but their defense can't stop the run right now. Their defense is just not creative. Their defense is predictable, and their secondary is severely lacking. Their coverage is not very good either. So they're not marrying, their front with their back end, and they're giving up too many yards on the ground. I think Washington, actually, with the way their offense looks, would be a promising NFC potential playoff team if they got more out of their defense, but that simply has not been the case. At number 18, I've got the Detroit Lions, another team that I've been very, very impressed by their offense. Their defense, obviously, they just played Washington. They beat them pretty handily. Washington came back, made that one interesting, but Detroit was able to hold on, and they went out in front very impressively, almost the opposite of week 1. But I won't give them too much of a hard time for losing to the Eagles because the Eagles will be very high on this list. The Lions have a very good offense. They're able to run the ball. They're able to pass the ball. And whenever you can move the ball in the NFL, you're a decent team in my eyes, and you can compete week to week and make things close. Jared Goff's been fairly good, but he's also missing a lot of throws that he could make. That could be the difference between them being an okay team and a pretty good one. Their defense has been pretty disappointing for the most part, but they did play better in the first half versus Washington. And they won't see a team like the Eagles or an offense as diverse as the Eagles every single week, so you can hopefully be better, And then Aiden Hutchinson was phenomenal in that game versus Washington with 3 sacks. If they can get a little bit of a pass rush to complement that offense that's scoring virtually every second drive right now, and Amon-Ra St. Brown's playing fantastic. They don't even have Jamison Williams yet, who's going to add a downfield capability to this offense. DeAndre Swift's electric. They need to find a way to get more out of TJ Hawkinson, but I think the Lions are really, really nice on offense and maybe a little bit of a one-sided team. But right now in the NFC, that might get you towards that wild card race. At number 17, I've got the New Orleans Saints, who are similar but the opposite. I think they're a little bit of a one-sided defensive team, which we kind of expected. Their offense showed up versus Atlanta, but not versus the BUCS. I mean, that's to be expected. The BUCS have probably the best defense in football, but the Saints, Jameis Winston, if they're going to be the team that makes the playoffs and squeaks in, he's got to protect the ball. I think even if he just protected the ball and the Saints punted the ball a couple more times instead of throwing some picks there, he obviously threw a pick 6. I think they're closer in that game, and actually it goes down to the wire instead of the BUCS kind of handily winning it in the fourth quarter there. It kind of was really close. The Saints even had the edge into the fourth quarter, and then once Jameis unwinded and Brady started to hit some throws, that's where the team separated. The quarterback play and the ability to protect the ball and the ability to make plays, and Jameis was unable to make plays. He missed a couple downfield shots where he had the defense, and then he threw it to the other team, and that ultimately could be the difference between the Saints making or missing the playoffs. Jameis needs to do a better job of managing the game and understanding what type of game he's in. When he's in a shootout, sure, be reckless, take some shots, but when he's in that close defensive game, protect the football, run the football, and don't go out of your way to throw it to the other team. So the Saints defense was back on track this week as expected. Offensively, they need Alvin Kamara back. Their receivers, they need to do better separating, especially at the intermediate level. I didn't see that much from Michael Thomas or Jarvis Landry. Chris Olave was really their most impressive receiver last week. At number 16, the Jacksonville Jags. Jacksonville's really impressed me through 2 weeks, and all of the promising things that I thought could be the case for Jacksonville, it is the case. Trevor Lawrence looks good. Trevor Lawrence looks like he's taken a leap forward. Trevor Lawrence's mechanics are back, and I think he's been really, really crisp through the first 2 games. He still throws maybe a couple too many risky passes that could be intercepted every week, and he needs to tone that down a little bit, but he's still making a lot of throws down the field. He's doing a very good job of checking down and saving his offensive line and not taking sacks. I think the offensive line has been slightly more impressive than I thought it would be, especially in the run game. James Robinson's having a field day out there. They're involving Travis Etienne. But what I really like about Jacksonville's offense is the amount of different targets they're getting involved. Evan Ingram had a good game this week. Zay Jones, Marvin Jones, we've seen them pop up in the first 2 weeks. Christian Kirk is kind of that engine, but everybody is contributing for Trevor Lawrence, and Trevor Lawrence seems to have trust in all of those weapons. Defensively, they're very athletic up front, and that causes issues for teams like the Colts. I thought Josh Allen had a phenomenal game. I think Roy Robertson-Harris is showing up. Their secondary is a bit concerning right now, but that's really the only weakness that I see on defense. Their linebackers are flying around. I think the Jacksonville Jags are the best team in their division right now. At number 15, I've got the Las Vegas Raiders. Your Raiders are at number 15, despite being 0-2, and I'm not overly concerned with the 0-2 start. They lost to the Chargers by 5 with 3 picks from Derek Carr. Okay, very good Chargers team in defense and quarterback. And then in week 2, they just let things get out of hand. They let the Cardinals come back, and that was more about the Raiders letting the Cardinals come back than anything else. They got to figure out a way to finish games. Derek Carr doesn't look like the same guy from last year. He doesn't seem as confident in the offense. He doesn't seem as confident with his reads. Obviously, he's still building rapport with Devontae Adams. Obviously, he's still learning the system. I think the Raiders will take time to shift their identity on both sides of the ball. But I do see a lot of potential for this team down the road, down the season, where if they can get everything to connect and everything to work perfectly in a rhythm and a harmony, then they can be a dangerous team entering the playoffs or getting close to making that run into the playoffs and squeak in as a wild card. It's going to be tough in that division, but I do think they have the talent. I do like the coaching, and I think what McDaniels is doing well, but almost to a fault so far, is being maybe a little bit too conservative near the end of the game and trying to make every game a one-possession game, which I understand that you kind of want to protect your defense, but at the same time, I think you should let things go a little bit more and be maybe a little bit more aggressive when you've got that lead, step on the opponent's throat, and hopefully he can learn from that moving forward as his second gig of a head coach. At number 14, we've got the New England Patriots. The Patriots have been better than I thought they would be so far, and I know that they didn't look so good in week 1, but I've actually thought that their offense has been better than maybe the points they put on the board. I think they had more opportunities against the Steelers to put up more than 17. And obviously, they missed a field goal there, but they could have put up more points in that game. I thought Mac had a better game in week 2. Just his ability to hit those underneath passes, stay on task, stay ahead of the chains, stay in rhythm, not allow the pass rush to affect him. I thought the offensive line for New England took strides forward this week in the running game and the passing game. I thought Trent Brown was phenomenal. Cole Strange continues to play very well as a rookie. Defensively, they're one of the top 5, if not top 3 defenses so far in the league. You saw what Miami did to Baltimore. New England's held their opponents to 13 points offensively, the Dolphins, and 14 for the Steelers. And one of those touchdowns was fairly late, so New England's defense looks pretty darn good so far. I want to see how they look against Baltimore. That's a big game, and they're going to play their first game at home. But Nelson Aguilar has showed up and providing a downfield threat. Jacoby Myers looks very good. Damian Harris, Ramondre are doing what they do. This team looks to be trending forward, trending up. I think they're going to be a competitive AFC team, and I wouldn't be surprised if they made the playoffs based on the 2 weeks so far. I understand week 1 didn't look so great, but I think that we're learning the Dolphins are pretty good, and in that game. It was a couple big plays that really separated the two teams. At number 13, we've got the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm not giving up just yet on the Bengals. I'm frustrated, no doubt, especially losing money on the Bengals last week. But Joe Burrow is still Joe Burrow. He's just got to learn to get rid of the ball and not take so many negative plays and not take so many sacks. If he can do that behind this offensive line, and this offensive line can continue to mesh and gain chemistry and rapport, I think that will be positive. Defensively, I think they're playing pretty good, but not great to the point where they can carry an offense that's struggling. Jamar Chase is phenomenal. Joe Mixon is phenomenal. T. Higgins is very good. I'm not that concerned. I think Zach Taylor has showed his true colors of being maybe not the greatest coach, and people were giving him a ton of credit last year, but that was more about the rhythm that passing offense was on, the combo of Burrow and Chase. The defense was playing well. Zach Taylor is concerning, but I think this team will get back on track. I think they have too much talent and too many key spots to not get back on track, and hopefully they get their head out of their rear end. At number 12, I got the Denver Broncos, and they're 1-1. They did not play well in week 1, although I thought they should have won that game, and they could have won the game by 14, to be honest with you. In week 2, another sluggish game. I'm concerned about the coach, Hackett. I'm not sure if he's made out to be a head coach. Russell Wilson's definitely not the same Russell Wilson he was a couple years ago, but I've been very impressed by the defense so far through 2 weeks. I'm very impressed with their running game so far. I think in week 1, Judy had a good game. In week 2, Sutton had a good game when Judy went down. I think there's the pieces there and the potential there. They're still working things out, but I see everything kind of coming together for them to be a potential playoff team in the AFC. They've just got to play better, especially early in games. At number 11, the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams look not like a Super Bowl team so far this year, but they still look like a team that's dangerous. They still look like a team that you've got to respect. Matthew Stafford made a lot of plays last week with his right arm. But again, too many picks, too many turnovers for that offense. Cooper Kupp's phenomenal, but they still need help at other spots to be able to contribute. Allen Robinson was a little bit better this week, but they need to get more out of their wide receiver 3. They need to get more out of Tyler Higbee and company. They need to get more out of their ground game. Their offensive line's still a bit shaky. Defensively, I don't think they're as good as they were last year, but you still got Aaron Donald. Jalen Ramsey bounced back in week 2. They're working things out. They're seeing what they've got on that side of the ball. Their coaching, I think, will mold this team into one that becomes a playoff team eventually, but I just don't think they look the consistency that they need to be that defending Super Bowl champ, or that we expected they would have entering year 2 with Stafford and McVay. They look a lot more like that mid-season struggling Rams team that just couldn't provide any consistency, and that's what I'm worried about moving forward. That's why they're outside the top 10. At number 10, I got the Miami Dolphins. You could argue they should be a little bit higher, but I kind of look at week 2 as a little bit of an aberration offensively. I understand Tyreek Hill's amazing. He's arguably the best receiver in the game. Again, Jalen Waddle's phenomenal. They've got an improving offensive line. I love what they're doing schematically in terms of everything, really. The RPO usage, the play action usage, getting Tua outside the pocket, getting the ball to their playmakers, the yards after catch. All those things is great. Their defense did not play very well last week. I thought they were maybe overly aggressive, allowed too many big plays to Rashad Bateman, to Lamar Jackson on the ground. The only area they were very good was stopping the running backs in the run game. Other than that, I thought Lamar played really, really phenomenal, and Baltimore was able to do what they wanted and pleased on offense, which was something I didn't expect in that game. I thought Miami's defense would play a lot better, but they came back down to earth a little bit. So the aberration, I just think, is you played a very banged up secondary in Baltimore, and Tua made a lot of plays that I just don't see him making throughout the course of the season, because a lot of guys were wide open. I mean, wide open. So that's why I like the Dolphins, but I'm kind of cautiously optimistic, if that makes sense, at number 10. At number 9, I got the Minnesota Vikings. I still got the Vikings inside the top 10 after a disappointing showing on Monday night. But they played a tough matchup for them in Philadelphia, a team that can dictate pace, a team that can run the ball, a team that can throw the ball. That really stressed a Vikings defense that I don't think is great. I think it's okay, but it's not great. And when you can protect and you can block their pass rush up front, it makes life difficult on that Vikings secondary. That's definitely one of the... They're at least below average, right? They're not bad necessarily, but they're not good either. So that stresses them out. And then offensively, they just didn't live up to expectations. I think the offensive line didn't play all that bad, honestly, but they weren't able to really get that ground game going consistently, which forced Kirk Cousins into some tough spots. They took away Justin Jefferson for most of the day, and Adam Thielen and Osborne didn't step up, and Irv Smith didn't make enough plays. You know, Irv Smith on the stats had a good game, but it feels like the Vikings are maybe a little bit too reliant on Justin Jefferson at this point, and they need those other receivers to step up, and they need Cousins to be willing to trust those other guys. So the Vikings, they lost a tough one, 24-7, but I'm not too worried because I think there will be better matchups for them moving forward, and this is a game that just wasn't that. At number 8, the Baltimore Ravens. I still got the Ravens at number 8, and it's because Lamar looked MVP level quality out of his play on the ground, through the air. He was phenomenal. I thought Rashad Bateman showed quickness, twitch, and speed that I've never seen from him before. Thought their offensive line played darn well picking up blitzes. Mark Andrews had a good game. They need to figure out a way how to run the ball with their running backs and take some pressure off of Lamar. Their defense needs to get healthy, but moving forward, that's how I see this team. You know, as of right now, obviously you rank teams like Miami ahead of them because they beat them, but a lot of that had to do with injuries to their back end, to their secondary. I thought their defensive coaching left something to be desired in that game plan, but overall, you know, if you're saying you're trying to track towards the end of the year, I'm looking at Baltimore as still a pretty competitive AFC team. A lot of it was health, and it was fluky too. At number 7, you got the Green Bay Packers. The Packers bounced back this week, and they look like a competent team on both sides against a pretty bad Bears team. Aaron Rodgers still one of the best in the game, obviously. He had a phenomenal start to that game. I thought he was moving around well. He was scrambling around, making plays, making accurate dimes down the field. Their receivers, I thought they got a lot more out of their receivers. Sammy Watkins this week, just adding Alan Lazard added a level of comfort. They're continuing to see what Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs can do for them. Offensive line was, they were a little hit and miss in the game, but Rodgers was able to negate that. Their running game's really strong. When they're able to run the ball, they're able to dictate the game, and they're able to win the game, and that's really what it comes down to for this team. I think they're going to be going as far as their run game takes them on offense. Defensively, they just played better. I thought they covered better. I thought they were more feisty on the back end. They clearly played with an edge, and that was nice to see. Their pass rush was also pretty darn good. Their run defense, on the other hand, not so much. At number 6, the San Francisco 49ers. There's something about Jimmy Garoppolo coming back to the lineup for the 49ers that just gives me a level of comfort, a level of a nice cushy pillow. Like, it just feels good to know that Jimmy Garoppolo is the quarterback of the Niners, and that's not saying, oh, I wanted Trey Lance to get hurt. Obviously not. Like, hopefully the guy recovers, and hopefully the guy comes back and can be the future of this franchise, but right now, there's no doubt about it, and I told you guys last week, Jimmy Garoppolo is the better quarterback, and they would have beat the Bears with Jimmy Garoppolo, 100%, but there's just a level of comfort for Jimmy Garoppolo being the quarterback. You know what the floor is, but there's also a ceiling to this team this year that I feel like if Jimmy's healthy at the end of the day, and I feel like the defense is better even than last year on paper. I love how their safeties and their secondaries flying around the way that they didn't last year. Their pass rush is really good. It's hard to run on them. Their linebackers are phenomenal. They just extended Dre Greenlaw. Their offense, they still got to work a little bit on that interior offensive line, but they'll grow. They'll get better. They haven't really had Kittle yet, so we'll see what he adds to this offense, but Ayuk's in a better place this year. Debo can do what he does. Jeff Wilson looks good as their premier runner right now. So the Niners are one of the top NFC teams. I wouldn't be shocked if they represented the conference in the Super Bowl. I think they have that much potential, even with Jimmy G, and they've got a higher floor. I just feel comfortable with the Niners right now. At number 5, the Los Angeles Chargers. I thought they played better than the Chiefs. Like, they outplayed the Chiefs in that game, and really the difference in the game was that pick 6, where Herbert threw the pick 6 at the goal line, and they hurried up, they got to the line, and that was a bad play call. That was a bad move by them, but I thought they outplayed them. I thought the Chargers defense actually caused Mahomes some discomfort in the pocket. I thought their pass rush was impressive. J.C. Jackson obviously looked a little slow coming off the ankle surgery, so he'll only get better from that point on. They didn't have Keenan Allen in the game, which is something important to consider for those big situations where Herbert's looking to get rid of the football. He just didn't have his safety blanket, which is what Keenan Allen is. I thought Eckler looked great. I thought their ground game was efficient. Their offensive line was really good. Herbert was phenomenal. As long as he's healthy, they're one of the top teams in the NFL and one of the top teams in the AFC. I got them at number 5. At number 4, I got the Philadelphia Eagles. I thought the Eagles were thoroughly impressive offensively last night, and they showed things defensively that I didn't think they had. You know, their defense, from a scheme perspective, was just a little bit tighter. You know, they made things more difficult. They weren't as soft. They weren't as just relaxed, I would say. They were more in your face. They were more Philadelphia Eagles of old. And finally, the defensive coordinator, Gannon, realized the personnel that they offer, that they can actually match up on teams. Darius Slay was unreal with 2 interceptions. James Bradbury showed up for the first time. Hassan Reddick had an impactful day coming off the edge. They have a ton of talent there, and they really stopped the Vikings' run game. So they allowed the Eagles to jump out in front from an offensive standpoint. They dictated pace with their running game. They were running all over the Vikings. Jalen Hurts was accurate. He was consistent. A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert were problems in that game, and Miles Sanders is running hard. I think everything you want to see from the Eagles is there, and they're one of the best teams in the NFC right now. And if you argued, hey, right now, the way they're playing the best football of any NFC team, I wouldn't really disagree with you. At number 3, you got the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, they're able to come out on top against the Chargers because of that, management at the end of the game. Just that 1 or 2 extra plays that the Chiefs were able to come through with over the Chargers. And that's why I have them at number 3. Typically, the Chiefs are a better team at the beginning of the year than they are at the end of the year. They really start the season hot. I do think there's going to come a time where defenses start to figure out what they're doing with the new personnel offensively, which makes life more difficult for them. But I do think their defense is going to continue to improve with some of these younger players, and as they continue to get healthier. Sucks to see what Willie Gay did, but, he's going to be out now. But I think their defense is going to continue to improve, and I think it's going to balance out their team a little bit more. I'm not sure their defense is a championship defense, but I think if they can continue to play very good offense, they'll be fine on both sides of the ball. Their running game has been more impressive this year than in years past, and Mahomes is playing very good, confident, composed football. Probably should have thrown a couple picks in that game, but he was able to survive it, and he was able to make enough plays and also manage the game well in that one towards the end to win it. So at number 3, I got the Chiefs. At number 2, I got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The top team in the NFC. They beat the team that they never beat. They beat the Saints, which is a team they never beat, 20-10, and it was on the back of dominant defense, which I think you'll see all season long. I think not enough people are actually talking about the start that the BUCS defense has had for whatever reason. We've all seen it with our own 2 eyes, but not enough people are talking about it. This is the best defense in football, led by, I think, a very much improved secondary. I think they're playing much better in the back end, and they're able to stop the run. They're able to get a pass rush. They can blitz you. Devin White's playing fast in the middle. Levante David's playing good football. And they're just playing good at all 3 levels on defense. And they're causing turnovers. They're taking it away from you. And they're being aggressive as well, which is setting the tone in each matchup. Offensively, yeah, they're going through their struggles with some injuries, right? Chris Godwin not there, Julio not there, Mike Evans gets thrown out of the game. Well, you got to rely on Scotty Miller. You got to rely on Russell Gage now. You got to rely on some of these guys that you didn't think you would have to. But I think Brady still looks the part. His arm still looks really good. I thought he actually did a good job of managing the pocket and just managing the game in general against the Saints. Like, he understood it was going to be a low-scoring game. He didn't really throw any turnover-worthy plays in that game. Like, I don't recall a play where he threw it in a spot where it was a dangerous throw. He made all of the right throws and even should have had a better game. There was a couple drops here and there. There were some unfortunate events with fumbles. They failed a 4th down. I feel like the Bucs should have probably won that game by a little bit more at the end of the day, and that's for both games that they've played so far. Dallas, they got stopped in the red zone numerous times. But once they get healthier on offense, that's going to start to coordinate, and then defensively, they're playing the best defense in football. So once those things come together, I think they'll represent the NFC as the best team in that conference. They also signed Cole Beasley today, so we'll see if he upgrades into that lineup and see if he can help Brady out with those injuries. And at number 1, we have the, without a doubt, Buffalo Bills, who are playing the best football in the NFL right now. Josh Allen's playing like the best quarterback in the league right now. Their offensive line's playing really good football. I think they're doing a good job of managing the pass rush of opposing teams able to get rid of the ball quick, able to move the chains. I think Allen's doing a good job of just taking the short passes and being in good, manageable down and distances. I think they're running the ball better so far this year. And I think their defense is just flying around. Von Miller has done something to that pass rush. It's taken the next step. Tre'Davious White's not even there yet, and they've just dominated defensively from a passing standpoint. Run game, they were good against Derrick Henry. They were pretty good against the Rams. Like, they've been really good in the run defense department as well, which is an area traditionally they've struggled. But there's no real weakness right now with the Bills that you can identify. They've had some slow parts in their game through the first 2 weeks, right, where it looked like it was going to be a close game versus the Rams. It looked like it was going to be a close game versus the Titans early, and then they just hit this extra gear in the second half, and they're able to pull away and just suffocate you. So that's what I want to continue to see if they want to take that #1 seed in the AFC and set the tone as that top dog in the NFL. Let me know, you guys, what you think of the power rankings this week, the Week 3 NFL power rankings, my power rankings entering Week 3. It's Mitch. Thanks for watching. Gronk spike the like button and subscribe to the channel for more BLV NFL videos just like this. Peace.